A eulogy to my Uncle Hal. When I was 13, I met the man that I would call my Uncle Hal. My Aunt Donna and him had just been married, and I had never met him. You see, I had lived in Michigan and had just moved to Florida in the last couple of days. My Aunt Donna had introduced him to me as Hal, and that's what I called him. Although he was technically my uncle, I wouldn't give him the title for a few years. But over the next few years, I would spend a lot of time at my Aunt Donna and Uncle Hal's house. My cousin Sean and I are about the same age, and we would play quite often. Now, Hal liked to fish, and he did it every chance he got. He'd often drag Sean and I with him, either for the company or to give my Aunt Donna a break. I'm not sure which. Jungle Prada, Mary's Pier, and Terry's Bait Shop were some of his favorite spots. We would visit these places and fish so much that even today, those waters feel like old friends. It was on these trips that I got to know my Uncle Hal. He taught me how to bait a hook with a shrimp, and the reason why they're called grunts, and how to get stung by a catfish, and that needlefish were a lot like my pecker, a lesson I still remember today. Eventually, his hobbies would change to classic cars, car shows, car clubs, cruise-ins became his pastime. He even owned a few. I remember one time he came home with a 1950 Chevy, a car so pristine that my Grandpa Green would inquire, "How many died in that wreck?" Yes, many times he would come home with a project that would leave us bystanders wondering, why? Maybe it was nostalgia, maybe it was a challenge, or maybe my Uncle Hal could see the beauty in them where the rest of us couldn't. Uncle Hal liked to use his hands, and he was good with them. He was a carpenter for many years. Whether a simple task like hanging a light or a fan or rebuilding entire apartment complexes, my Uncle Hal could handle them all. I had the privilege of working with my Uncle Hal for over a decade. Working together with my Uncle Hal is some of my fondest memories, and I'm glad that I had that opportunity. Shooting sports were another hobby that my Uncle Hal enjoyed. Hunting was a true passion of his. Dove, hog, turkey, deer, it didn't matter. He just wanted to be in them woods. And when he wasn't hunting, he was thinking about it, or dreaming about it, or watching it on TV, or talking about it, over and over and over. My Uncle Hal loved hunting so much that he kind of dared to fall asleep. Could you imagine that? In bed next to Uncle Hal, lights out, about to fall asleep, when out of the darkness you hear, "There's a deer. There's another deer. There's another deer." Probably why Aunt Donna made him sleep in the other room, on the other end of the house. And it didn't matter what he had, bow, rifle, shotgun, it was all the same to him. All he wanted to do was to bring something home to feed his family and to share with his friends. Sometimes it was a deer, sometimes it was a hog, sometimes it was McDonald's. Yes, my Uncle Hal was a man of many talents. Growing up, I looked up to my Uncle Hal. Even as an adult, I wanted to be more like my Uncle Hal. In fact, I'm wearing his underwear right now. I'm kidding. Or am I? The one thing my Uncle Hal loved more than anything else was to laugh, and he loved to do it at somebody else's expense. Any chance he had to pull a prank or tell a joke on someone was not wasted. But don't try to tell him one. It could be the funniest thing he's ever heard, but he ain't gonna laugh. It could have instantly topped his list of things to say to get a laugh, and he'd just sit there stone-faced like it was the dumbest thing he'd ever heard. My Uncle Hal lived a good life. He surrounded himself with the people and the things that he enjoyed. My Uncle Hal lived a full life. My uncle didn't face death with fear. I'm not sure he was afraid of anything, but if anything, death was not one of them. Why should he be afraid of death? Look at it this way. If you put a child in one room and his father in another room, and have the father call the child will fling open the door and run into the other room with total disregard with what is on the other side, because he knows that his father is there and will keep him safe. Uncle Hal wasn't afraid of death because he knew that on the other side of death, his father was waiting. He knew that death wasn't a portal to uncertainty, but rather a doorway to safety. He knew this because he had been given a promise. You see, my Uncle Hal was a believer and he was saved. My uncle gave his heart to Jesus. Jesus gave a promise to my Uncle Hal. He promised to go and make my uncle a room in his mansion in the kingdom of heaven. Now, Uncle Hal had a nice house, but let's be honest, it was no mansion. And those dusty roads that my uncle loved pale in comparison to the streets of gold that are now under his feet. My Uncle Hal was given a promise, and he believed, and he went from a believer to a knower. And folks, he wants you to be a knower too. He wants you to see the place that the Lord has made for him and for me and for you in paradise. He wants you to know that your ticket for there has already been paid, and all you've got to do is claim it. Now, if you're a believer and you're saved, then you know you've already got your ticket, but if you're not, there's hope. Maybe you accepted Jesus years ago and you've done nothing but walk away from him. Well, let me tell you, there is hope. If you have questions about your salvation, now is the time to get them answered, because death is real. Please reach out to a pastor in your community to talk more about salvation. There's a lot of things you could call my uncle. A believer is one of them, a carpenter is another, a hunter, a firefighter. Some of you know he was a firefighter. For those who didn't, surprise. He was also a father, a son, a brother, a friend, a husband, an uncle, and one of the best damn people I've ever known. When I was younger, I bought a bottle of Jack Daniels and brought it to a family get-together because I knew my uncle liked whiskey as much as I did. A $30 bottle of Jack Daniels. When he asked me what I was drinking, I said, Jack Daniels. To which he responded, "Why are you drinking that cheap crap? Here, try this. This is better," he says, and hands me a $10 bottle of Black Velvet. One pull from that bottle was all it took, and I knew I had found my new favorite whiskey. Even now, as an adult, I keep a bottle. So I'd like to do a toast. Maybe you don't drink, and that's okay. Just use whatever's in your cup. The sun has set on an amazing life. To tomorrow, where the light dawns in heaven and darkness are no more. Sleep well, Uncle Hal.